get some nice work done today. Yeah, working on my document rendering stuff again today. Switch over the scene here. There we go. Where I've got kind of markdown with some extensions, and it renders out to this document here. So I'm designing a standing desk for myself that I'm gonna just make out of plywood pieces. It's gonna be a very simple kind of thing, and as I'm doing that, I'm adding functionality to the rendering library that I need to produce the design that I want. So where I left off yesterday, I had started working on mocking up a data structure that lets me group 3D objects together. So, pardon me, right now I have a rough idea of the structure. If I can pull up an example here. The structure is a map of objects, and then you can have any number of objects together, and that becomes a like an assembly, as it were. And I'm basically realizing now that, I'm wondering to myself if there's even a point in putting it into a map like that, or if I should just use a list as the high level. Got junk in my keyboard. If I should use lists as the high level thing. But whatever. What happened here? There we go. So actually, before I get into that, let's close up yesterday's little rough notes there. It is still June, and it is the 9th, right? Indeed it is. Gotta set something up here actually as well. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doo. There we go. So today I have get assemblies function working acceptably, and then make a circle function that works with extrude. Right, so those are kind of the two things I want to see if I can manage to get done, and I'll go from there. The reason I want to do a circle that works with extrude is so that I can draw cylinders, because I'm going to use cylinders to make the shape of a bolt, like the shank and the threads of a bolt, and then I need to make a hex. Actually, I'll make a what do you call it? Polygon function with that draws n sides of equal length. I forget what that's called. So like an equilateral triangle, or then a square, and then a pentagon, and then hex, but they're all equal length sides. There's like I think there's a proper term for it, and equals, doesn't matter, a function to do that. Draws n sides of equal length. That works with extrude. And then if time allows, which I don't think I'll get to this today at all, but I also do need to figure out how to do union, difference, and yeah, so there's union, which takes two 3D blobs and basically welds them together so they're one. Difference is like the subtraction of the one from the other. There's another one, intersection, which actually you can make an intersection from a union and a difference and two differences or something like that. So basically you just need union and difference. But that's kind of going to be challenging with the current approach I've got going on. So that might be a bigger thing. That might take some research after the fact. But that's the idea. These first two things are kind of what I want to do. So I'm calling it assemblies here because I have this really rough idea of this here. No, that's not it. Assemble here. I should probably call it assemble, right? Assemble 2, and then assemble. Yeah, that works. Right, so if I assemble right, that works. I've got wait, does that work? No, something's going weird here. Oh, I've done something incorrect. So, actually, assemble two objects, x try, let's try that. Nope, something is incorrect. Huh. Well, let's have a look here. Oh, this is why. Okay. I haven't, these objects are not properly formatted yet. So I have to fix that. While I'm still early on in the stream there, if there's anyone watching, tuning in, just hanging out, thanks for coming along and watching. Feel free at any time to say hi in chat, ask questions, or just you know, do your own work or whatever you're doing quietly. That's totally cool too. Glad I can be around to make some noise. I noticed in my list here, VHawk19, not sure if you're going to see this live or see this later, but thanks for the follow. I didn't see that. I don't think I was streaming at the time where I got that, so appreciate the follow. Excuse me. Yeah, so feel free, chat away. Just enjoy doing some programming and streaming, and I want to keep doing it and keep getting better at it. And chatting's always a fun part of that. Right, so the reason I'm trying to do this here, I'm trying to make the concept of assemblies possible, because what I have is here, if I do this, map, draw edges onto this list, leg A, leg B, I do believe that'll render correctly without an error. It should show up here in a moment. Yeah. So here I have this part here that I'm in the middle of designing. I want it to be in the code represented as a single thing, right? And I want to group it. I want to assemble it together somehow. So I'm trying to come up with an approach that can group everything together nice and simply. And the idea I had yesterday was this, where you convert everything to an object, right, that places everything into an object key where the value is a list of any number of those objects, right? So if everything has an object, is ASDF a, yeah, okay. So if I make def ASDF2 is the extrude of try sketch, is that a, yeah, I want to extrude it only 2. So we have ASDF and ASDF2. I have to do this. Clear doesn't work here. Right, so ASDF is that, ASDF2. These are two different objects. They have the same points at the front here, but they have different points on this part because they're extruded differently. So if I merge those, what happens? ASDF and ASDF2. Right. Merge doesn't work because merge overwrites right? Yeah. So that's not gonna work the way I wanted it to. Yeah, okay. Update. What's a smart approach here? Well, no. And so I have a function specifically built to handle that. So, right? That should work now. Right? So if I assemble each of these objects No, I just nested it further. There, see that? That's not what I needed. So this, I have a broken assumption somewhere. So I have to look at that for a minute. Assemble. Trying to just make a test object here, 2 test objects. See if I can do that. Okay, so if I assemble AABB, right, the function works, but it doesn't return the structure I intend, right? It doubly nests things here, which isn't what I need. I want these lists to merge. This shouldn't work either. Yeah, it does the same thing. So I don't have the problem isn't here with reduce so much as with, excuse me, with this here. This is incorrect logic. It should instead be, if I concat instead, will that actually be the way I want it to be? No, of course not. Oh. This has to be conj the objects list of B, and that should probably be fine now, I think. Almost. Okay, that looks okay. So now if I do the same with assemble AABB. Okay, that's looking all right. Now, got to do it with these. Okay, so we have correctly one object key and a list of maps, one map and then a second map, all with each with nodes, edges, faces. Yeah, so that's looking more like I intended, so that's good. Now what I need is the draw function to correctly draw it, so I'm working on this here, this test function that'll draw an object. It'll just go through each of the elements in the object list. Right? Does that make sense? I might have to do this recursively, right? Because I might easily run into a situation where I've got objects nested inside objects and stuff. So right, because this isn't correct, so Okay. Where'd I go? There it is. So this is an annoying thing. When I like tab, to move the cursor to where it needs to be, it shoves my window, it moves it around, it changes the scroll. Changes scroll position when make it stop. Nothing's ever totally perfect. That's all right. I can work with it. So this draw edges test thing that I need to do, I need to well, there will be basically two situations. It'll either be right, if I pass it a renderable object, right, it must first, it'll be a map, and the first, or the key will be objects. So I can always let objects be the key objects from the renderable thing. So that's, you always destructure that. Then that's always going to be a list, but it could be a list where any number of them is itself an object. So if it is an object, then you have to recurse back. Oof. Does this make sense? Oh, my brain shut off. Right, so the situations that you can have a list with multiple items, some boy, I'm struggling right now. all objects list with multiple items, all assemblies list with one item assembly, list with one item object. Okay, so actually here, let me do this. Work in progress, draw functions. Yeah, so okay, I have an idea to have assemblies, which can be maps containing lists of actually, what if instead what if I forget this idea of objects here for a moment? Let's define ASDF as xtry, just nice and simple, right? So it's just a map of nodes, edges, and faces, and a yeah, and ASDF2 will just make it the extrude, just so it is different, of try sketch by 4, doesn't matter. Right, so ASDF is this, ASDF2 is this, and then if we call an assembly just def okay, assembly's not like a function or anything, is it? Doesn't look like it. Define assembly as just this vector or list or whatever of ASDF and ASDF2. So this assembly is just going to be, it's just straight up a list of objects that you can render. If I use that, then the draw edges test of anything it'll either be right, it'll be a the I don't know why I struggle with this so much. It should kind of be second nature to whip out some recursive transformation functions, but I always am struggling with these. This is very clearly something I need to look into more myself later. But so the first cases I can think of here are, you could pass into this a list of let's get rid of this let because it doesn't make sense anymore. So a renderable object will be a sequable. So list vector lazy seek, I think. Oops. Whatever. Yeah, okay. Repeat one, I think. Lazy seek. Yeah, okay. I was just messing around with trying to figure out what all counts as sequable items. So lazy sequences, regular sequences, lists, vectors, all that kind of stuff. List, vector, seek, etc. Right? I think even a map is seekable. Yeah. Okay. So it's either you can in the thing I'm trying to build here, it could take a sequable, right? Because assembly is this vector of nodes and stuff. Something just didn't render properly there. That's a little bit weird, but yeah, whatever, that's fine. Okay, so it could be a sequable, or it can actually be let me make a object item contains yeah, so I'll just do this. Roughly speaking, an object is only going to be an object if it contains Can you map contains? No, that's silly. Contains. Oh wait, can you do contains with like a list of Oh no, because that'll treat this like the key, right? Like if I were to do something weird like this, that'll be true? Yeah. Not what I need. I could do something weird like this. Map partial contains A, B over this list of true, true. Ugh, it's just easier to AND. Can you AND that together? And I'm sure is a special function, so that, or a special form, so that probably there's no way you could do that. It's not a special form, it's a macro, but yeah, you can't really map a macro properly. That's fine. I don't need to do it that way. I'm being silly. I'll just do this. So and contains item, the key, key, nodes, edges, faces. Nodes contains edges, contains faces. So object ASDF true. Now if we go into ASDF and dissociate faces, that's now not true anymore. If we also do nodes, false, and edges, it should also be false. Perfect. So that's fine for now. So the reason I'm going to do that is to help with this branch idea here. Just call it not a test but a work in progress, because it's not really a test. That's a bad way to name it, so we'll go on there. Right, so it's either going to have a sequable or it's just going to be one object. And then inside here it could be no, this is where you do want to like recurse how does that work? Want to recursively call. And then as soon as you get to one object, you just run the function, right? That makes a bit of sense. But you need to do well, let's start with we'll just start with this case here, right? If object row, if it's an object, all you have to do is the final thing, which is this whole rigmarole. But if it's not, that's where it's going to be oh, maybe I could do something weird like this. You could do draw edges, work in progress of first, and then rest like that, right? But that's the singularity scenario. And then you have to produce a new arity where it's single object and the remaining like that. Does this make any sense? Why is this so difficult for me right now? Let's see if I can find a simple example here. Recur. Clojure docs recur. Factorial. Loop. Loop recur. Compute across. This seems interesting. Let me see. Recur with variadics. Okay, let's see if compute across has anything useful for me to figure out here. So compute across, you give it a function, you give it some elements, and you give it a value. And the value is like the seed, I guess, for it. So if elements is empty, you just return the value. But if elements is not empty, you recur, where you pass the function again, you pass rest of elements, and then you run the function with that value and the first of that set of elements, right? So you would run, in the case of total of, you would run plus numbers 0, then you'd recur that with itself and all that jazz. Boy, oh boy. I wonder if this is helpful for me. Clojure. This is, well, okay, we'll go to hiccup. I'm not sure that I'll be able to quickly and concisely summarize how this compiler works for my own use. Declare compile HTML, compile form, yeah, default, takes an expression, renders HTML of the expression. This is not helping me right now. Okay. Empty. Play around with stuff here, because I gotta wrap my brain around this stuff, otherwise I'm never gonna get what I need. Right, so here, this idea of factorial has a multi-arity situation, right, where you pass it a single number and then it seeds the thing with a default value there, or you can call the accumulator, call it with an accumulator yourself, and it checks for some final case where it finishes here, but if it doesn't finish, then you recur on something and something. Okay, so let's have a look here, see if that is helpful to me in any way for actually getting this built, right? So okay, so we've got a factorial example here. The first arity situation is just you give it a number and then it's default with 1 as the accumulator. I don't need to accumulate anything, do I? I suppose I'm accumulating. If I draw edges of ASDF, it does give me a list of hiccup renderable stuff, right? So I could make the case that the accumulator is draw edges whip of row and then the list. See, the problem there is this is not a particularly useful example because I'm not just accumulating oh boy. Let's try to go back to what I was thinking about for a moment. Okay, so we got this singularity thing, right? This is either going to be an object or it's going to be a sequable. So if it's an object, then all you do is draw edges of that object, which is this function here, which works draw edges on a single object. It just works the way you want it to. But if it's not an object, it's going to be a list, in which case you're going to call you're going to call this function draw edges on first of that and rest of that, which gets you into the double arity, the two arity thing here, where you're going to have a thing and a list of items, right? Where you just run the same check here for a moment. If object row, if it is an object, actually first, if empty items, if that's true, all you need to do is if objects row, then you draw edges of row, and if it's a list, draw edges whip. First row, rest row. This is a terrible way to do this because it's confusing, and I also don't think it's totally right, but I want to get something. But if items is not empty, if items is not empty, all you do is draw edges whip of no, something's wrong. Hey, and Permyakov, how are you doing today? I'm getting myself all twisted around trying to make draw edges function that works recursively, and I'm very clearly not doing it in a smart way. So what I have right now is this draw edges function that works on a renderable object. So I've got this sort of thing. I just have this structure, ASDF, is nodes, edges, and faces. And if I do this draw edges function up here, it works on that. And it produces, it produces a list of things that you can render in Hiccup. So what you can do there is, the reason for that is you can do this. This is like SVG code that you can get out of this draw edges thing. But what this doesn't do is, if I were to have a list, draw edges, right, of a list of items to render, this won't work. So I have to map that. But what I want to draw nested objects. Yeah, that's right. So if it's just a flat list of objects, all I have to do is map it, right? Draw edges, just like I did there. And then I can even render that HTML directly, right? Then I get what you expect. But I'm trying to work on building a concept of being able to assemble things together, which then is that function's not what I want. For right now, I'm going to consider this list an assembly, right? Like I want to render lists is exactly what you say. So nested things, I mean. So obviously map works on flat lists, but as soon as there's a list that contains a list of objects, then it breaks. So I was just trying to muddle my way through this, and the thing is, I'm frustrating myself because I know, like, I've done recursive things before, and I know that it's a useful and important thing. It's ultimately probably not even that hard. I'm just getting myself all confused. So it really is something I need to probably finish up offline, where I don't feel embarrassed for not knowing it all up front. But that was what I'm attempting to do here, but it really doesn't make much sense. Right, so I have, like, if I back out of this here, if I start this over just a little bit, oh, that's not what I meant to do. Can sketch out something for me. It's easy since it's inherently recursive. I mean, that's extremely kind of you. Don't feel obligated to if you don't want to, of course, but yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah, it's easy since it's inherently recursive. I figured as much, and that's why I'm like in my own head right now. Is like I'm almost certainly overthinking it a little bit. So thanks for being patient and watching anyway. But yeah, I mean, if you want to sketch something out, you go right ahead. Don't feel obligated. That's totally cool. Give you a minute? Yeah, sure. You take your time. Okay, so let me see. This. No. Right, so that draw edges whip should work on this. Yeah. But it should not work on, so the obvious thing that's not recursive, I can then map draw edges onto row, but that's not recursive at all, right? That's not going to work. It'll just work for two. Yeah. No. Actually, first row, rest row. Row items. Do. I don't think this is right. Oh, I've done something wrong here. Does this even make sense? Does this even terminate? Draw edges, work in progress of ASDF. That works because it stops right here. It's a single object and it just draws the edges. But if I want to do a list, right, it doesn't work because legal argument exception. Why would that be? That, I'm confused by that. Oh wait, did I shadow something by accident here. Clojure.core/object, does that exist? No. Why would that be? Why does that fail like that? List. Oh, it. Wonder, can you, is there a way to make and not check all? No, that doesn't make sense. Wait, does it? Map. And map. Item. Is this sensible? I don't think so. Object. False. Object. False. Oop. Yeah. Okay, so that's not correct. Okay, so if it's an object, you draw edges. Right now I'm assuming that if it's not an object, it's a list, which is risky, but fine for now. Then you run it again with first of that. You do that. You draw edges of it. And then you run this on items. Right, which don't you always have a single root object? No, it's possible that you might start with a list to draw, like, so the list itself would be the single root object, if that answers your question. So here, right, I want to be able to call draw edges on this list directly, or here, if I define the leg assembly as just the list of leg A and leg B, right? I want this to work. That's what I'm gunning for. Draw edges, leg. So it will be a single list, but it'd be nice also if you could have it, you know, if you want to draw a leg and then another leg like that. I'm not sure if I'm making sense at the moment. That's my bad. So this won't work right now, draw edges of this leg, which is a list itself, right? But it is possible, like, that you pass it an object directly, or you pass it a list, or you pass it a list and an object. Let's assume that it's a single root object, which isn't a list. I guess that whatever you're sketching out, that would make it easier then. Oh, I got something there. Let me now. So I'm running. This is a silly little problem. I'm programming on my Mac, but I have a laptop here that I'm running my stream stuff on. So I have to copy and paste that somehow. Actually, I'll just rewrite it. Sorry for the terrible pseudocode. Oh, don't even worry about that a little bit. Here, let me just get rid of this here. Help from, spell your name properly here, Permyakov. Yeah, let's see. Draw nested. Right, oops. If I could do anything properly, that would be helpful, eh? If I could even type it in the right spots, that might be even better. I'm falling to pieces right now. Oh boy. Hope everyone else is having a good day at least. Maybe it's easier to use some online sketching tool. So don't bend over backwards to help me, honestly. This is, if I can't figure out the code that I'm trying to write, then that's a me problem more than anything. What you've typed in there, I'll see. I'll just pop it into my window here, and I'll get rolling from there. Already this is really nice that you're trying to help out. So no worries there. Okay, so draw nested object. It takes an object. You wanna concatenate. Draw edges of the object. Yeah, so I don't know why you put it in quotes, but you mean this, right? Oh wait, those are gonna fail. Like that, right? I mean, there is a name, there is a function named concat directly, so if that's what you meant there. So let's see here, you're concatenating, draw edges, some prologue before nested objects. Let me see. I'm just retyping out what you've put in there, and then I'll try to parse it here for a moment. And then you want to map, draw nested, get nested objects onto row. Some epilogue after nested objects. Let's see here. Did I even type it properly? The world might never know. This is wrong. It is called concat, yeah. Get nested objects is, however, you get a list of nested objects from a root object. I'm going to stare at this for a moment and try to figure it out. So if I'm not talking at the moment, no worries, I'm just running it through my head for a minute here. Concatenate, draw edges of row. So that does return a list. So to concat onto that is obviously no problem. So we're good there. Some prologue before nested objects. I'll get to that. but you want to then map draw nested, get nested objects, is get nested objects. Didn't follow the data structure closely. Yeah, that's totally no worries. If we would do get nested objects, right, so let me see if right, so that would be filter I don't use filter in I know filter, predicate, and then the collection. So filter works by, if I take a predicate function on a list, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 as a test, that should return only the even numbers in that list, or in that vector in a list. Yeah, 2, 4, 8. Likewise with odd. Right, so if I do this, filter sequable row, that should be some weird thing where, so if I imagine that get nested objects is passed in a vector that looks like this, something that looks like an object, another object, a list of objects, so a nested thing, and then an object, and then an object, why not, and then a nested one again. ASDF is risky because I type it wrong all the time. Right, that, oh boy. I need smaller data structures to test with. Did I have an example data with nested objects on the stream? Oh, not exactly. I'm in the middle, like this is, I'm making this up as I go. So what I just described there, it like a nested, let's imagine a scenario. I would want the draw edges function to ultimately work on this. If I could pass it part A, part B, part C, assembly A, assembly B, and if I need to move another copy of assembly A over 10, 10, 0, right? Where part A, part B, part C are the structure. This won't make any sense. So part A, part B, and part C look like they're objects, so they contain, they're a map with nodes, edges, and faces. And then assembly A and assembly B are lists of objects. So object looks like nodes, list, edges, list, faces list. That's it. And then assembly looks like object, 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 and so on. Hey Bizmonger, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Why Clojure? That's a fair question. I think, okay, the structure's somewhat different than what you assumed. Yeah, and Permyakov, yeah, that's totally fair. As you can tell, this is messy, so if you don't understand what I'm doing, of course not. I mean, I barely understand what I'm doing. This is a very, very iterative process I'm taking on, so it's totally fine. But why Clojure? That is actually a good question. So I'm a self-taught programmer, which may or may not be obvious. And I originally was learning and using Python to do some engineering calculations and stuff for my work. I was like an industrial designer type of thing. So I would need to do you could always do it in spreadsheets, but I needed stuff like cross-sectional area calculations for rectangle tubes and round tubes, and then do rough first pass buckling analysis. So I started writing up some of that stuff in Python. I eventually started using Python to try do some automatic 3D modeling of those sorts of things. I used programs like OpenSCAD, which is not Python, but there's, I think, Python bindings to this. So it's a 3D modeler that you write code that makes 3D models, basically. It's really cool. But point is, I was in Python, and I started having to figure out object-oriented programming and classes and all of that stuff. Modeling without the Clojure spec library. Yeah, for right now. This is, I wouldn't even call this alpha release what I'm doing. It's me hacking around, keeping notes, and then going back and putting proper stuff in there. So like you say, spec, I know it exists. I intend to learn it effectively, but getting a working prototype out is more important than learning the intricacies of spec at the moment. I'm not pushing it aside. I'm just, I know it's there. So REPL-driven workflow, absolutely. Yeah, I was saying Python, I was starting to have to get into the weeds of object-oriented stuff, and I found it confusing, and often it felt like really heavy structure and rigidity with classes that call each other and all that kind of stuff. It felt overkill for the kind of stuff I was hoping to achieve. So I kept reading about Lisps and stuff like that, and they, at the very least, they intrigued me. I'm not opposed to any one type of programming. I don't care what people, if they want to work this way or that way, it's fine. But it was intriguing to me. And then I discovered that Clojure was like a modern version of Lisp, because Lisp, it's cool, in theory, but if you don't know what you're doing, it's hard to know where to start. Do I do scheme? Do I do racket, but is racket scheme or is it something different? All that stuff. So Clojure just seemed like, as Lisps go, the one that made the most sense. And I've just been hacking away trying to get better and better at it. In fact, you probably won't see perfect programming on this stream, because I'm trying to learn and learn and learn, and this is one way to kind of force it to happen a little quicker. So I don't promise perfection. Let's see here. we want to know how to represent an object with nested objects inside of it. Your code is something like that. So Bismonger, I like types. Clojure has a cult following with really good devs. You like to rely on the compiler to enforce business policies through types. Yeah, I've heard one of the two things that come up as kind of, I would call it knocks on Clojure, are that I read about most frequently are the JVM being slow for startup times, which I would agree with. It's kind of slow, and that there are no types. So it's a dynamically typed language, and some people that is kind of a deal breaker. You employ F#. I've heard about F# before. I'm actually going to make a note here. Future languages to learn. All the languages. Right. Bismonger uses F#. I believe that F# is different because it's like one of its main selling things is a good type system, I think, right? I don't actually know much about it, but I've heard about it before. Maybe cool to study. There. Runs on .NET. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I am not opposed to static type versus dynamic typing. It's almost certain that there's different tools for different jobs, and Clojure was cool, and it's what I'm using at the moment, and I really enjoy it. I have not taught myself languages that are statically typed yet, so I honestly I can't even talk about it. Book, domain modeling made functional. Sure, that seems cool. If I could type, made functional. You need a Clojure book, you want to learn it, but don't have the time due to a passion project. I actually haven't fully read a Clojure book either, but the stuff that I've used, I mean, if you're already a sufficiently capable programmer, this might not be the right thing for you. I don't know. But I found this to be like a great mix of useful and clever writing and that kind of thing. Clojure for the brave and true. But like you said, you're working on a passion project. What are you working on? That sounds pretty cool. So npermyakov, let's see if here, what you would want to know is how I represent an object with nested objects inside of it. So that actually is a great question. The first thing, what I was trying to make work as a prototypical example is something that looks like this. I'm gonna make parts, just these empty things here, nodes, edges, faces, right? So part A, with my not very intelligent predicate here to check if this is an object. It is, because it has nodes, edges, and faces. Okay. Part B, I'm gonna just make the same as part A, but give it a different name. So the structure of an object is exactly that. It's one map with nodes, edges, faces. The structure of an assembled thing is, at least as I'm thinking about it right now, is just this. Just a list. So you see here, you've got this entry and then you've got that entry. So it's just a group of objects. And then I want draw edges to draw the entire thing, which is going to just be a list of, actually here, let me back up one step. If I define assembly A as list of part A and part B, now I have assembly A, right? If you count that, it has two objects in it. That's all it is, just a list of those two objects. Then draw, excuse me, draw edges. I want to work on a list of part A, part B, and assembly A. So the structure, of course draw edges won't actually do that. Def scene is just going to be a list of objects to draw. Assembly A, right? So the scene is a list that can contain objects directly or lists of objects, which can themselves contain lists of objects. That is like the dumbed down base case that I want to be able to work, I think. You're working on a mobile delivery platform using Xamarin, F#, Azure Functions, Azure Storage Tables. Oh man, it's currently a bit above my pay grade, but it sounds like a lot of fun actually. A lot of good tech in there. It seems like, are you? Did you pick those sets of tools specifically to learn more about them, or like are you a pro and those are the tools you want to use, or maybe it's a mix of both? Sounds pretty cool either way. Okay, so Bizmonger, I just noticed as well that you gave me a follow. Thanks for that, I appreciate it. What am I looking at here? Okay. I am letting myself get sidetracked. I'm okay with that. There's very clearly some things I need to seriously get recursion through your head. Practice it tonight. You need it. Also, see if I should use spec early or after alpha. Because I've never used spec, but actually that you bring it up is an important thing. So it's really not nested objects, it's nested lists of objects. Yeah, I suppose I'm really bad with my terminology here. You want to increase your hourly rate and be taken seriously as an architect. Those are admirable goals. I find you establish yourself as a technical authority on F# and mobile order fulfillment in Florida. Whoa, sincerely, congratulations. That's a good position to be in. Sounds like you got just enough leverage to kind of change up how you work a little bit. That's pretty neat. Yeah, and Permyakov, I have to apologize because I am using terminology very loosely right now, as you might be able to tell. So object I've kind of, at the beginning of the stream, I did have the idea of a map that looked like this. Objects, and they were a list of items like this. So I was actually using the word objects differently. So no excuse, I'm just getting sloppy. That's my bad. But you're right, it's just lists of objects nested into each other. That's kind of the base case I'm working with. Objects have behaviors, is that the term I'm using? No. Right, so this is perhaps a huge problem that I've created for no real reason. I am purely trying to, so I have the idea of 3D shapes here that I'm rendering into this document that I'm working on. And I can draw the edges of it, or I can draw the faces of that 3D thing. And I'm using object in the 3D world sense, like this pen is an object. I'm not using it in the programming sense of this object has functions or methods or whatever attached to it. So if there's a better word for that, I couldn't think of it. Right? So what I've been saying is objects, and I purely mean maps of the shape, nodes, edges, faces. So like this. Oh, where am I going here? Like that. This is a map with nodes, edges, and faces. And the nodes, it's a list of nodes with values and attributes. The edges is a list of indices pointing to the nodes with attributes as well, and faces point to edges, and so on. So that's the idea I had going there. Structure, yeah, structure could work. Annoyingly, like, it's just, they're things, right? It's just, or stuff. Or actually, this just came into my mind. In SolidWorks and other CAD software, it's solid modeling. So maybe if I call it a solid, that makes the most sense. A widget could work too. A solid, a chunk. Naming things is so hard. It seems so silly. Like it seems like it should just be like that you understand something. This is that name, but I have a problem with it sometimes. Let's see here. What have I actually accomplished today? I've managed to confuse myself, so I feel like I've been taking steps backwards, unfortunately. Curious what my workflow is when modeling. You enjoy leveraging DDD techniques. I think that's domain-driven design, if I'm correct. Yeah, that confusion and feeling like you're walking backwards is part of the journey. Yeah, it doesn't always feel good, but I do know that that's true. So ultimately, I'm pretty okay with it. And actually, you know, and Permyakov has been trying to help me through the chat as much as is possible to do in a chat text-based communication. So it's not as if I'm floundering without people trying to help. So that's pretty nice. So actually what my workflow is, man, that's another great question, and another point where improvement absolutely is possible here. But I can try to show the rough thing that I've got going on here. Oh, Permukov, you've got another example there. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll pop that in and see how I can make that work. See how I can make it work up here too. But I'll actually briefly explain the workflow I'm ultimately hoping for, and I have like a poor man's implementation of it. So I have on the left here, I have my document that I'm writing. So this is text I've added, right? You save that, and then in an ideal world it's instantaneous, but it's not instantaneous at the moment because it isn't yet. In fact, it's not even working, of course. Shoot. Let's see here. So I have this file with a watcher. Oh, did I break something? No. Okay, here, let me go here and fix that. So I've got, as a prototype for the workflow I ultimately want, this file here, I have if I could remember where my windows are, I have a watcher, like a watcher watching changes to an entire folder, and whenever the specified file changes, it runs a build. So you can see that it puts it up there in my REPL, and then that build produces an HTML file, like it renders it into HTML, and then I have this page being served by, I found someone's Node.js thing that's like it's a live server, and it just refreshes the page when a change happens. So it's like I got it working, and that's the workflow. I write prose explaining the design, and it automatically renders to the document here, and then I have this here where I can inject Clojure code right in, so you can see in it, and it evaluates it and spits it out into the document. Pardon me. So I have, the idea is that I make clean extensions to what's essentially just a markdown parser that can read and then produce an output. So I don't know if you saw that, but that changed there. And then you can see the model. Then the real awesome idea would be eventually to have sort of a two-way connection here, right? Right now it's just one way. I change the document and the rendered result looks different. But it'd be really cool to, for something 3D, be able to have a little interactive slider pop up here, right? So if you have global variables that you want to change, you slide them and then it changes the display or something like that. That's the eventual like pipe dream, but right now this is like just making something work. Look forward to the conference talk when to finish the project. Thanks. Thanks for the vote of confidence. So I absolutely want to get this to like a state where other people can actually use it and not without like the arcane knowledge of making it work. So that actually is one kind of overarching goal of this stream, is to force myself to keep using it and to keep working on it, because this kind of workflow, when it's smoothed all out, I honestly think is there's something compelling about it. Like I keep coming back to this, so it seems pretty fun. So in terms of, so I have all these global variables here, right? If I, for example, change the height of this standing desk that I'm working on to 20, in the future I think if you wait for it to re-render, you'll see this graphic when it renders again change according to the height, right? Which is pretty neat in and of itself. But imagine how cool it would be to have the Clojure code run over this, automatically determine, like it would know all the global parameters and expose an interface into here where you can zip those things around and see the model change live on your own, like on the render. That would be so cool. How do I account for units of measure? Right now, the units of measure are assumed to be inches. How I'm going to account for that is probably with some, like I'm kind of thinking it'll be important to have sort of a concept of a global state map or something, where some pre-configured defaults are set up in there. So there would be like a units key, and it'll default to whatever country you're in. It'll be metric or imperial. Unfortunately, how do you account America versus metric? I'm in Canada, which ostensibly is a country that uses the metric system, but because we export and import with America so frequently, everything in engineering is still using imperial units. I have a little chip on my shoulder for that one, but it's actually totally fine. You just deal with it. You stuck in Toronto right now? So it sounds like you would rather be in, I think you mentioned Florida earlier, eh? Maybe you'd rather be there? I'm assuming you're stuck there partly due to current situation and border and travel restrictions and stuff like that. Stay in Miami Beach? Whew. I'm a little bit jealous. That sounds nice. All right, in Permyakov, before I lose it, I'm gonna pop this into my little example here. Let's see here. Defen draw nperm. There we go. Yep, yeah. Yeah, you know, things are a little strange out in the world today. It's hard to move around sometimes, but you know, at the very least, we've got the internet helping us communicate. I don't need to pontificate. That sucks that you're stuck. I'm sorry to hear that. It's no fun. Let's see here. If collection row concatenate before list of objects. You know what? Before I finish typing this out, let me add to my list of things to improve. Come up with fast way to send copy paste from chat to my Mac. I don't want to have to manually type things out. This is 2020. We have computers to do stuff like that. It's craziness. It's crazy making. What has my refactoring experience been like using Clojure? Pretty good. Again, I'll have to asterisk all of this with I'm self-taught. I do not want to say I'm like some pro programmer. There's plenty of stuff I have to relearn. But refactoring has been quite awesome. Like it's so easy. Like just the REPL-driven development causes me to build up small functions one little bit at a time, and so it's quite easy to make some implementation that you think will work, make it poorly, and then later on when you're not streaming live, you look through it again you totally get rid of these, like maybe you had some expressions in there that you didn't need to, or like you recreated a built-in function that you didn't know existed, and all that stuff is really easy. You interviewed a Clojure developer a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to click that link right now, but thanks for sharing. Yeah, now is not the time for me to be watching that, but I appreciate that anyway. Refactoring, what am I saying? Since it, for whatever reason, the REPL-driven development causes me to keep functions small, it also makes refactoring rather straightforward most of the time, which is really nice. I've been experimenting with, so I'm actually in org mode in Emacs here, so I can like close out all the sections of this file, and I can, anytime I save this org mode file, pointing the wrong way, it tangles, like it takes all the code and saves them into their own CLJ or CLJC files. So I could structure here, I can structure the whole thing and restructure it by changing around the named sections here. I could even pop it into a new file name if I want to change that. So refactoring the code itself is nice because the functions are small. Refactoring the where things go is relatively straightforward because you can move things around and write notes to yourself right inside your thing here. So it's been pretty helpful. That's a very long-winded way of saying, how's the refactoring experience? It's good. Where am I at here? Concat some prolog, map draw row. Let's see here. Sorry, my phone's going off. I have to check it sometimes. It's actually not true. I don't need to check it. I'm just compelled to. Map draw row. Right, so that is what you do if row is a collection. If row is not a collection, you draw edges of row. Right, so oh man, going on these wild tangents. Losing track of where I'm at with everything. That is okay. Nothing wrong with asking questions in the chat. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so if I go back into here, drawing some things, right? I was working on this here, work in progress. Object, rename this widget or chunk or solid, something else. So that's fine. Objects look like this. An assembly looks like a list of those. Get nested objects. Oh, pardon me. So let's see here. Let's mock this out. Let's just blast this because it wasn't working anyway. Without prologue or epilogue, it's just map flatten x. So it's, I actually, you might be right, although Flatten might like flatten things too far. No, actually. You don't think it's sufficient? Yeah, no, I think you're right that that wouldn't actually work. But it's a compelling thing to do if I'm lazy. The only risk... See, so I've tried to use flatten before with other things, but I ran into problems like this. So if I imagine a hiccup data structure as a rough example, right? If I've got like a div tag with some paragraph text in there and some other text, more text. If I flatten that, it flattens it all the way. And so it just destroys the structure that was there, right? So that's why I've been wary of flatten. Although when you flatten a list of things that are maps, like you can't, it doesn't flatten a map. It's the flat, maybe it does. What have I done? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Part A, yeah. If you flatten that map, that surprises me that that's weird. Okay, whatever. Let's go. If collection row. So collection, I assume, works similarly to sequable, right? So this will be a collection. This will be a collection. If I do repeat 1, that's also a collection. So lazy sequences are also collections. Okay, good. Makes sense. It's probably flattened values in the map. Oh, yeah, that's almost certainly what it is. A1. So this should give me a 1. No? Well, whatever. That's unimportant for right now. Okay, if collection row, if it is a collection, you can concat the map of draw edges width of row that does work, right? Map 2, 2, 2. Wait, that's not helpful. Whatever. I'll take your word for it. I think that makes sense. If it's not, right, then you just draw the edges. Row. Yeah, what have I done? Syntax error already refers to that. Oh, shoot. I've got namespace problems because I'm not careful with the namespaces that I'm in there. You'll have to use another way of distinguishing your objects from lists of objects. Yes, that is true, actually. Right, so I could do the first thing that comes to mind here is and. So if it's collection and not object, right? So if it is a collection but it's not my object type, whatever you want to call that, which is this predicate up here, that does mean it's some kind of list. Why? Oh man, I've got paren problems here. Let's fix this. Right. I'm sure there's a smart way to put these predicates together. What is that called? Doesn't matter. Fix that later. If row is a collection and row is not an object, right? Then concatenate the map of that. Otherwise, just draw edges. Okay. All right, so we've got a function that might work. Yeah, wrong parenthesizing. It's a common thing. It looks like it would work now. So and collection, not object, row. Oh no. This is going to be like this. Yeah. Right, so I'm cheating. Okay, let's try draw edges, work in progress of this piece. Okay, so it works there on a single one. Let's try it on a list. It's nested, or like it seems to be working a little bit better anyway. So let's actually now give it a try. And instead of leg A, it's going to be leg, the whole thing, which is a list here. So if I save that, part of me expects errors to occur because I might have not thought of everything. There it is. That's okay, I can figure it out. Let's run the function on the file here. Null. Alright. That's the way you want to do it, huh? Whew. Come on, there we go. Let me, before I forget, change this 39.5. Oh, of course it still won't work because there's still massive errors happening. If I just draw edges of draw. So we're in a state that is working. Draw edges is not working because something's going wrong when it call rotate on. Right, because rotate on. So there's something that's. Geez. I'm pretty sure that Mac OS swaps the order of these things around, so I'm constantly going the wrong way on my desktops. I think, unless I'm going crazy. Could be a bit of both. Right, so I'm getting a failure with the function draw edges work in progress here, because it does part A, that's the wrong. Right, so I've confused myself yet again. Draw edges work in progress of ASDF. Okay, that's all normal. And this stack overflows at the internal rotation function here. So let's have a look. Transforms in this rotation function. It must be getting the wrong shape of data. Like it's probably getting a list instead of getting the map, like instead of getting the object. I called it S here, that's not consistent. Row. Yeah. I guess we'll change this one too since I see it. Document document naming convention also stick to order of args. Example, always put object as first arg, or always put it last. Don't mix and match. It's just a note to myself there, because I'm noticing just how inconsistent I've been when I'm making these functions, so that's got to change. There's more to fix than not to fix. Okay, so the reason that it's failing on this rotate thing is almost entirely due to the fact that I think Maybe do I have to apply concat onto that? Does that make sense? Does that even work? Wait, I don't need to test it there. I'll test it here. Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Let me see if this will do something other than fail. Well, not yet. Let's run this. Slurp. Key must be integer. All right, I'm just trying to be lazy and not like look at the outputs of things, so that's not really going to be helpful. I suggest reading the function to get the idea. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Or at least trying to run it with some simplified drawing. Yep. That is what I am going to do. So this is where we were working from here. I have goofed up my namespace. That's fine for now. Try to run it with a simplified drawing, not in the complete production environment. Yeah, that's probably smart. Break down into a simpler total environment, not just testing it over here. I'm trying to jump ahead of the game sometimes. Okay. Draw edges, work in progress. Right? That's a function I've got. And that's the one I'm trying to figure out. So, see what draw edges does. How do you check, can you do equals on like data? It looks like you can, so let's see here. In the case of just one thing, draw edges of this and draw edges work in progress of this should be equal. I need to actually give it something to draw. Right, they are. Then if I draw edges, if I map draw edges onto a list of things, right? You get that. right? So here, let's bring that data into here, but rename them. Right. The simplified drawing procedure. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the shape of the data that's getting moved around. And I was trying to cheese my way through it. Look at the function, the rotate function, or you mean this function here? The recursive drawing function. Yeah. So this function here, the recursive one, is, unless I typed something incorrectly here, is what you've provided as an example here. Right, so it does seem to be working, but the problem comes up right when I run this. Oops, it's not, as far as I know, it's not, the problem isn't in the recursive drawing function itself. It's in one of my other functions. Rotate is what I saw. Key must be integer. Yeah. Did I? ASDF. Let's see. Rotate. Zero 90 0. Oh, I'm certainly missing something simple. I'm gonna try this one more time. We've got a global height is, we'll make it 20. Global thickness is 0.5. Yeah, note that draw edges is not equivalent, or draw edges work in progress is not equivalent to map draw edges AB. Oh, I think I see what you're saying. Let me get this out of the REPL first, and then I think I see what you're trying to point out there. So it's right. The latter returns a list of 2 elements. The former concatenates the 2 lists. Draw edges, work in progress of faces. Wait, if I draw an actually empty object, I don't think that'll work. Yeah, that's not helpful. Okay, draw edges, whip of A and B, like I was doing here, has the shape. It is a list of a list right? If I count that, right, so the former concatenates those 2 lists, but the latter map draw edges onto ASDF, ASDF. actually. So they actually are equal. Let's make this easier to read for a moment. So that's not it. Yeah, in Permyakov, that's kind of the problem I'm having. I'm really just trying to follow the program in my own head right now as to what's breaking. Maybe it's something obvious that I'm just not seeing. I do apologize for the silence and maybe not totally listening to what you were saying. I know you're attempting to help. The stream tends to go smoother when I already have done a ton of work up front, so I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've reached the point in the day where that's no longer true. So I really do apologize for that. It's something I'll need to work on, obviously. I'm gonna puzzle through this for just a little bit longer, but I am thinking this is probably something I'll take offline to really clean up all of this, right? Make it just way better than it is in terms of I've started polluting things here. I've got notes to myself all over the place, so I really need to sit and go through it, right? Because I have a sneaking suspicion that this is a problem that is like not too far away for me solving. It's just I'm getting self-conscious of doing it on stream, just sitting here thinking and not talking much. So it might be almost time for me to call it for the day. Almost, but not quite. I'm gonna see if maybe I actually have an error in my code here. Is it as simple as that? Have I just been a complete fool? Oh my goodness. Okay, so I think this whole time what happened was I called the wrong function here. Oh my goodness. That's so embarrassing. Okay, so here, right, if I just use my old draw edges function, what I'm doing in this line is passing it in a list of two objects. Make a clean rebuild. Yeah, for sure. So I know what I did wrong. The problem was actually not on the computer. It was me. It was me the whole time. That's so silly of me, right? So here, it's as if I were doing this, draw edges, and I wasn't mapping it, I was just drawing it directly, right? Of these two test pieces, this will fail. Key must be integer, right? So it's failing in exactly the same way it was with the actual thing. I was just calling the wrong function. Ridiculous. I really I really must apologize. That's horribly embarrassing. Oh my goodness. Right, so this will break, but this will work. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. I'm so embarrassed about that. Oh well. Now I know. This highlights the, yeah, so it's building now. This setup I have for my workflow, right, it very obviously isn't user-friendly in the way, like, it doesn't fail cleanly. Like, if it fails, I have to wait and then go back to, I swear Mac is moving these things around. I have to go and check the errors in the REPL, but the REPL's not necessarily on the same page or screen, I mean. It's a whole big old jumbled mess. Okay, but we've got this work in progress thing working just fine now. One thing I can't do with the way I've got my move function and rotate functions, they only work on a single thing, not on a collection, not on a list of them. Oh, pardon me. So if I want to do a move on this, I have to do it by map. So I have to map move, and I would have to do it, I have to make it a lambda, right? Map move. The object by this onto that. So if I move it along the X just to test that, let's see. I should see it move like that. Yep. Okay, so that much is working. I also have to do some kind of weird concatenate magic here. Well, magic. If I want to add axes to it, I have to concatenate the lists like that. And I should expect to see a XYZ axis here. Did I goof? I goofed. Leg. Oops. Figure. Why is that breaking now? Okay, so that built, and it's working with, it should still work with all this normal stuff, right? That shouldn't be changed at all. Yeah, of course. I don't know why. I didn't really need to check that. That makes sense. But that works. Yep, okay. So I'm going to make notes of a few things that just popped into my head before I forget. And actually Scratch got up. Actually, oh, cool. There's a little side thing for myself. If you do Clojure script, you can run code inline and then spit out the result here. So that actually might be useful for testing little one-offs in the future. That's fine. Document and test cases for draw edges whip function, create versions of move and rotate that work on lists of objects as well as just regular objects. And very importantly, find a way to improve this workflow. I make too many simple errors that I don't catch quickly enough. Example, using the wrong function name in my document leads me to waste time. So that's actually, I don't know how. Well, so the first thought, edit the doc in Emacs, not in VS Code. Put the Firefox window in the same desktop as Emacs, so everything is on the same screen at once. So that's just as a starting point, that makes a bit of sense. What else? What else might be good? Oh yeah, clean up the namespace mechanism. Extensions should only eval in their own own namespace. Currently they always eval in stylo.builder namespace, which can cause conflicts. So that happened a bit today. What else happened? Someone was suggesting that I use spec. I've got that up there. Seriously practice recursion, of course. And Permyakov, by the way, if you're still listening or watching, thanks for your patience and thanks for your help today. I really do appreciate that. It got me out of my head just enough. You gave me a simplified little function here, way easier than what I was trying to go for. So at the very least, that's a really good seed for me to clean this right up. So I appreciate that a lot. Was there anything else that happened that I didn't kind of keep a note of here? Naming conventions. Oh, I also have to I'll put the note here as well. Rename the objects to something else, maybe? Chunk or solid, something like that. You're welcome. Yeah. Fantastic. I think I'm going to stop spinning my wheels right now. It's pretty clear that I need to study up my own code base, clean it up, like you said there, do some clean rebuilds, get some things jostled into place a little better. And I've been saying this, I am loving streaming. Today was a little less productive. It was not my proudest programming moment, but nevertheless, I still actually really enjoy doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it more and more. It's clear that the amount of prep I should do prior, I think I wanna figure out on my own end a little bit of workflow for that. So I'm gonna see if I can do that tonight and tomorrow, and then have tomorrow's stream smoother still, and just up and up and up from there. That's kind of the thought going through my head. Because I want to be able to deliver a little more value, a little more upfront knowledge, and a little quicker problem solving, because that's another element that I want to practice for myself too. So that'll be enough rambling from me for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging. I really appreciate that. I keep saying this. I'm going to keep doing this. I'll be back again tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern Time. So starting the same time, going for around the same amount of time, and I'll be better prepared tomorrow for the tasks at hand. So hopefully everyone watching, everyone interacting has had a good time, and I'll be back. Script the whole script and code for it beforehand and just blast through during the stream. I'll pre-record the typing and everything and just talk like I'm doing it live. just fake the whole stream. Yeah, script the whole stream beforehand. Yeah, no, I was about to sign off, but that just sparked a little thought there. I think I want to prepare, as in know a little more clearly the steps I'm intending to take, and know a little bit of the things that might come up as problems, but actually scripting out a whole stream, I don't know that would come out organic, you know? So I do want to strike that balance, right? Like, I had a great time today just muddling through it anyway, so some kind of balance, I'll figure it all out. That's how you're going to plan to do it, your own streams in the future at least? Well, honestly, scripting it out probably isn't a horrible way to go. For myself, I want to find that balance of preparedness and off the cuff talking, you know, to look like a genius. Well, I'll tell you what, I certainly didn't do that today. But I'll be back tomorrow. Well, and Permukov, thanks for hanging out. Everyone else who's watching, thank you. I really appreciate that. Like I said, I'll be back. I'm going to head out right now, though. Have a good one, eh?